Welcome to Midlife Women Entrepreneurs, where you'll find real stories, practical strategies, and the mindset shifts you need for entrepreneurship. If you've ever felt like midlife was too late to launch a business, write a book, or chase a dream, think again. I'm Lynette Turner, your host, and I'm bringing you inspiring conversations and practical tips to help nudge you forward and keep growing in midlife. So let's jump in. Well, welcome, Dr. Becky Whetstone. I am super excited to have you on the podcast today. Welcome to Midlife Women Entrepreneurs. You and I met through the podcast. You are definitely known for straight talk, research-backed approach to helping women navigate divorce, emotional trauma, and relationship dynamics, especially in midlife. And I think you're going to add a ton of value to my audience today. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you. I want you to give yourself a little bit of an introduction, and then we're going to take it from there.
Okay. Well, first of all, hi, everybody. And thanks for having me on your show. This is so cool. It's so wonderful. And actually, the whole midlife dynamic, midlife crisis or midlife dynamic is one of my passion subjects. I'm obsessed with relationships first and foremost. And I have been since my teenage years when I would, grab advice columns and magazines that had advice columns in them, Ann Landers and Dr. Joyce Brothers and all those. So I kind of concluded I wanted to be a advice columnist when I grew up. So I did major in journalism. I was raised in the Southern United States to be a housewife. My parents, were born in 1919 and 1912. So in the South. So let's just say they were old fashioned. And they basically told me, you're going to go to college and you're going to go there because the good men want a college educated wife and then you won't have to work. It doesn't matter what you major in. I tell you, they trained me like it was like a robot. I just fell in line to what they were telling me to do and went along with these things and then started feeling the cognitive dissonance that always comes from when you're not being true to yourself, right? But that's also what's going to set you up for a midlife crisis later on is all that conformity and rule following. So I did become a housewife. I became a mom of 2 young children, and I quickly realized that was not for me. Not the marriage so much, but just as being a stay-at-home mom, I longed for more. It wasn't stimulating enough for me, and so I started getting restless. And in the meantime, my husband's and my relationship started going downhill, and I had been very accommodating to him, overly accommodating. I had really thrown myself under the bus for him because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. I didn't really understand, healthy relationship dynamics or anything like that, even though I read advice columns and whatnot. And so my discontentment, increased, and I ended up having my own midlife crisis. Seriously is what it was. I was about age 32. I tell my clients, that I believe that the seeds, at least, of a midlife crisis begin between 28 and 32. So you don't have to be 45, 50, 60 to have a midlife crisis. It all has to do with sacrificing and conforming on the front end of your life and not having fun and not getting your needs met. And then sort of having a protest and a rebellion later on going, wait a minute. I'm going to make it about me now. So that's kind of exactly what I went through in my marriage crisis. And at that time, I wasn't a therapist. Like I said, I was a housewife. And we went to the marriage therapist, and the marriage therapist told us there was nothing he could do to help us because we were in a marriage crisis. And if we weren't ready to work on the marriage, there was nothing he could do. So he sent us away during one of life's most stressful moments and left us to fend for ourselves. And our nervous systems were activated. We were scared and we hurt each other and lashed out at each other, did stupid, crazy things. And we ended up, I believe, divorced prematurely. And it happened really fast. And it was a shock to the system. And then I had to go out and get a job. So I did get a job at the newspaper in San Antonio and started my journey toward becoming a true advice columnist or relationship expert. And when I was doing that, people loved my writing about these subjects. And I started being asked to be on radio shows in San Antonio and TV shows in San Antonio. And people would call in and ask me questions, and then they would complain that I didn't have credentials. So I said, all right, I'm going to go to grad school and get those credentials. So that's what I did. I set off to go to grad school, not seriously thinking I was going to be a therapist and that was going to be my career, but I fell in love with marriage and family therapy, which is what I was studying. And I loved learning about things at a deeper level, kind of a more research based, legitimate, meaningful information that was on a different level from, let's say, Ladies Home Journal, whatever women's magazine I was reading at the time, Cosmo. And so while I'm in grad school, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to go in the library and I'm going to be spending a lot of time up there doing research on why that therapist couldn't help us in our marriage crisis. And was there information that we could have been told, anything that would have helped us? And I literally found a mother lode of this fabulous information. And I was already learning that in grad school, they weren't teaching it to us. They totally ignored the subject. Even though we had a divorce and remarriage class, it just, marriage crisis was not a thing. So when I did my dissertation research all around this, wrote my dissertation about the decision to divorce, how people decide to divorce. And I came out of there after 5 years of grad school with my PhD. And I said, well, there's a void out there. Couples need help with their marriage crisis and nobody's doing it. So I set out to learn about it, to start working with couples specifically to help them with that. And so over the last 20 years, I've developed expertise in the area. It's all based on that research that I've studied. Really nice results. And I find that couples they really are grateful to find someone that knows something about it. And so I had a book come out about it in February, and I'm really giving my full court press right now to make marriage crisis management, is what I call it, a well-known thing that people can find and get help when they don't know whether they want to stay married or get a divorce, or their spouse just told them, I think I want out. So that's what I do now. Is I'm all about marriage crisis and helping couples and families make the wisest decisions for their families and make sure that they do right by their children in the process.
Wow, that is so good. You got me at conformity. I feel like we have lived, every midlife woman who is in her, I would probably say mid-40s and older, we had that similar upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
We never really were encouraged to chase our dreams and put marriage on the back burner. And this life of conformity has restricted so many people. But I'm going to hone in on women because we ended up having to sacrifice for that life. And I think
Yeah.
that we got very resentful. And I think we lived in probably a lot of masculine energy because we were never able to follow our intuition. And I think we live that way, and it's not good.
Well, human beings thrive in freedom and authenticity. I didn't know that back in the day. Now I've studied all this and I understand it very clearly. And I went through the therapy process too. When I was going through my divorce, I started going like, who am I? What the heck is going on here? Why do I feel so out of sorts? And I learned that I was conforming, and I learned that I was basically performing like a circus animal to please my man and my biological family. And so I learned very early in my therapy process that I was going to have to be true to myself, or I really felt like I was going to end up in a mental institution or as a physically ill person, because I think all that suffering from the conformity and not being myself was making me physically ill. My body was breaking down. And so when I started learning how to be true to myself and to tell when I was being true to myself, my health improved 1,000%. Everything about my life improved 1,000%. So now, when I get young couples that are in their 20s and 30s and they're all about, we've got to save X amount of money by the time we're 29, we've got to work 2 shifts, or we've got to work 80 hours a week. I tell them, you are setting yourself up for a midlife crisis. Like, you are so out of balance. When you're all out of balance in that responsible part of your personality, or the overachiever perfectionist kind of personality, and you don't have the balance of giving yourself breathing room and time for basic relaxation, fun, play, frolic, then you are totally a midlife crisis waiting to happen. Because if you don't put yourself in balance, it's like your soul is going to do it. And that's why your soul, it's like a part of your personality is going to bust through and say, that's it. I'm not conforming anymore and I'm having a midlife crisis. And what that is like the child part of your personality on steroids, but in a self-sabotaging way. And if you had been in balance, things that your child part of your personality needed in a healthy way. But that's kind of, Carl Jung wrote about how the shadow comes out when we're not true to ourselves, and it's going to get our needs met, but in self-destructive ways. So I see this all the time with my clients, and I'm dealing with a lot of people who are in midlife crisis, questioning their marriage and everything else. It's really an opportunity for a super healthy reset, and that's what it was for me. I'm not looking back. I'll never forget a parting shot by my ex-husband as we went through our divorce, because I was going through therapy pretty frequently and intensively during our marriage. And he said, I paid all that money to get you some therapy, and all it got for me was you telling me to go to hell.
So he thought he paid for you to basically divorce him, really.
Basically is how he saw it. And he said, you aren't the woman I married. And I said, no, I'm not. But I'm telling you, this is a good thing. I think if he'd have given me more leeway during my midlife crisis and kind of looked the other way while I went crazy for a little while, we could have come back to each other and reconfigured the dynamics of our relationship, because I think he would have been willing. But he was so angry with me during the phase where I blew out of the cannon and was like, don't tell me anything. I'm going to do what I want to do. Nobody can say anything to me about it. Those usually last about 1 to 2 years before you come back into balance. Well, he was like, you're either in the marriage or you're out, and I'll give you 2 weeks to decide, which was completely ridiculous. And that's one of the things that I speak to now with couples in crisis is we don't have to be in a hurry. Let's just take our time and decide what's right for us through intelligent conversations. And so I really do try to get couples to slow down during these times and just not push themselves. And it's like, think of it as the dust is all kicked up and we need the dust to settle so we can see where we are.
So Becky, I want to go back to what you said about the soul, how the soul will eventually, I'm paraphrasing now, but rise. I want you to break it down a little bit more, because I've never really heard a guest break it down that way, where it's your soul and your soul eventually rises. What is that feeling? What's happening during that moment?
Well, I think what's happening is you have an observer to your life. You're living your life and you're talking to people and all that, but in the background is a part of your personality that maybe the Christians call the Holy Spirit. It's observing you, and your body tries to tell you that you're out of sync with yourself. Your soul taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, you look at this. Maybe you need to adjust this in your life, or maybe, pay attention to this. This might need to be tweaked or changed, or maybe you need to stop doing this right here. And it does that by giving you feelings in your body. You might have tightness in your chest or a sore neck. Your throat might get constricted. You might have an achy belly. That's your soul trying to get your attention. Okay. And that's why my body was breaking down physically, is if you don't listen to the tap on the shoulder by your soul trying to communicate with you, and you ignore your messages, then it intensifies the pressure, and you start breaking down at the cellular level. And so, of course, Freud said we had 3 parts of the personality. So you have the responsible part, you have the child part, and then you have the adult in the middle that mediates the two. We should be able to listen to that voice in the middle that says, Becky, you're working too much. You need to pull back into balance and take a vacation. take some time off, spend some time with your family. So if you ignore that voice that's always trying to get you to be balanced, and you stay out of balance, then there's a part of the personality that Carl Jung wrote about called the shadow. And the shadow is going to pressure you to be true to yourself, but it's going to do it in perverse and self-destructive ways. So it literally comes in and takes over your personality, like in a hostile takeover. I have seen clients, I could tell you stories you would not believe about how some of my clients' shadow took over their personality and almost destroyed them. And they were good people, hardworking people, happily married people, whatever, who did some crazy, crazy things that almost destroyed them. But what it was their shadow was trying to hold them accountable and make them true to themselves. For example, I had a client one time who was a businessman, and he had some partners. They started a business 15 years before. He was in charge of sales. It was very, very, very successful business. And at this point, he was just sort of skating by. The work wasn't challenging anymore. And he said the voice in his head told him, man, you need to get out of this business and go start another one, because you're not stimulated anymore. You're just on easy street now. And he didn't listen to the voice. He didn't listen to that intuition that was telling him, you need to get out of here. Like, you need another challenge. And so what happened is his shadow took over his personality, and he didn't even realize it. And he had these sudden urges to start exposing himself to women at work. And he did.
Wow.
And this is and he said it went on for quite some time. Like, he would know when a door was going to be open a certain way at a certain angle, and he would just stand in front of that crack in the door and expose himself. And he said it went on way longer than he thought it would. And then finally one day his partners called him in and said, dude, man, like, what the hell, And they said, you're fired.
Yeah.
You're fired. But what the hell, And so when he called me, he goes, Becky, I'm not a pervert. I am not a crazy person. I am a respected man in the business world who did something he does not understand. I do not know why I did this, and I have to find out. And so we realized that because he wouldn't quit his job and start a new challenge, like his intuition, that voice in his head the soul was telling him to do. The shadow created a scenario where he had to quit work and be set free to have that opportunity to do something else. That's one of the most profound stories I ever had in my practice that just perfectly illustrated the craziness of the shadow. And so the shadow hates the conformity, you guys. Carl Jung's theory of the midlife crisis, which I in the book that I wrote that was released in February, I talk about the midlife crisis and created a graphic to illustrate how it goes down. Like, the first half of your life is conformity. Then you're going to either have the crisis or you're not. If you power through conformity for your entire life, then you're going to be one of those people that I see at Walmart, that you're only 35, 40, or 45 years old in a little cart because your health has broken down and you're a chronic pain patient or something like that, chronic illness patient, because that's what happens to people that power through the conformity and never come into balance. Go ahead.
Why do you think we power through that conformity? I think about terms like, I don't have my voice. It's stuck here in my throat chakra, or can't say that. Like, why do you think we can't break free from conformity?
Well, when I think of people who are stuck in their throat chakra, as you put it, it's a metaphor for you need to have a voice and you're not giving yourself a voice. You're constraining yourself. And so your throat's giving you problems metaphorically because it needs you to speak for yourself, to speak out, to advocate for yourself, and you're stifling it. And so maybe your symptoms are manifesting themselves in your neck and jaw. A lot of TMJ is totally trauma related. If you're having gut problems, maybe you're not listening to your gut. I think a lot of the problems, physical problems that we have, are metaphors for what we're not dealing with. When I see really overweight people, for example, I might think they're carrying a load that they're not dealing with. A lot of these metaphors prove to be true in the therapy room.
Yeah. So, Becky, let's dive into your book. Do you have a copy with you? Do you want to give it a show?
I do. This is my book, everybody. This is the culmination of my life's work. I think I want out what to do when one of you wants to end your marriage. And it's really, it really covers every possible aspect of anyone who's unhappily married and thinking about divorce. But it also does kind of a autopsy of your relationship, and tells you how you got into this situation in the first place. There's a lot of, I think, really great lessons about marriage. So even if you're not on the brink of divorce, I think you're going to find a whole lot of gold nuggets in there. But yeah, I tell people about how to monitor the health of their marriage. That's one of the reasons they're in a marriage crisis, is because they were not monitoring the health of their marriage, and they inadvertently entered the 5 stages of a deteriorating marriage and they didn't even know it. So it's really important. When I read the research so many years ago and I found out about the 5 stages of a dying marriage, I was literally in the library screaming, why doesn't anyone teach us this? I didn't know I was in a process where my marriage was dying, and I could have done things about it sooner before so much damage was done. So yeah, I'm trying to put all this information out there now.
Do you want to go through the 5? Do you want to drop a few of those nuggets and go through the 5 stages?
I'd love to.
Let's do it.
First stage is called disillusionment. That's where, this is all about awareness and how much time you're thinking about it or focusing on it, right? So all of a sudden you become aware, I think I'm unhappy. And then people typically say, well, yeah, but marriages have ups and downs, and so I'll just see how it goes and see if the problem continues. Stage 2 is when you say to yourself, wait a minute, this problem's not going away, and it's serious. And it's so serious that we could end up divorced. Oh, I don't want a divorce because of kids, money, what other people think, religion, whatever your reasons are. So people keep going and they get to stage 3, which is, man, this is getting worse and worse and worse, and my ability to tolerate it is much more narrow. So I'm going to do something called detachment, which is I'm going to start a new hobby or go back to school or get a job or have an affair or do something that takes me away from my marriage. And that way I can cope if I have this third thing over here that distracts me from my marriage. I remember when I didn't know I was in this stage at the time, but when I was in this stage, I started going to grad school in communication in San Antonio, not therapy yet. That would come much later, but I was planning to get myself together to be able to potentially support myself, in at least a middle class kind of lifestyle. So then if you stay in stage 3 detachment without speaking out or going to marriage therapy, then we don't know what day, what time, or when, but your spouse is going to do something one day or not do something where you go, that's it. I will not be with somebody that says or does or didn't do that thing, whatever it was. That's called the straw that breaks the camel's back. And then after that is stage 5, which I call death of the marriage. And I don't mean that you'll be divorced necessarily. You might be, but at that point, you will never return to how your marriage was. The marriage will either have to change at that point, or you will probably get a divorce. So and I tell people in my book, at stage 2, when you tell yourself this is serious and it could lead to divorce, that is when you speak out to your spouse and tell them that you're seriously struggling in your marriage with your words, not passive aggressive actions. You must explicitly tell your spouse how much you're struggling and that it's serious, and you need to go get professional help. I work with an equal amount of individuals and couples. Interestingly enough, 75% of the time it's a woman who's leaving the man. And so it's usually the leaning in partners, the ones that just found out how unhappy their spouse is, they're the ones that call me. Oh my God, my spouse wants to divorce me. What do I do? So I have a lot of men, individuals contacting me for coaching and advice. So a lot of men have lost something. They've lost something because they think that being decisive or, advocating for themselves in marriage is being an asshole, and they don't want to be seen as an asshole. So I feel like they've gone to the other extreme to where they're too soft and a kind of a wimp, and they're terrified of speaking out for themselves. They're terrified of being seen as an asshole. And what I coach my men clients is of course women don't want an asshole, but they also don't want a weak man. We need a man. Women are attracted to the masculine energy. A feminine woman like you and me, it's not natural for us to be in our masculine energy 24/7. We do it to survive. We have to be in our masculine energy when we're in our careers, especially when you're a single mom. I mean, you have to manage everything. So you're in your masculine energy, and then, of course, you've now got your brain trained to stay in your masculine energy. But it's physically and emotionally exhausting for us to stay in our masculine energy 24/7. And so I coach my clients especially when they're having these sexual chemistry problems, and the masculine energy talk that I'm giving you now resonates with them. It's for the woman to, when she comes out of the workplace, to consciously take a deep breath, soften herself, and hand the football over to the dude and let him be the man for a while, because we're not going to connect with our man when we're both in our male energy. It's so funny. I mean, I'm sure all you women have noticed that, like, say if my husband and I are putting together a piece of furniture on the floor, we got the instructions out there and all the little screws and pieces and everything, and we're both in our masculine energy while we're putting that thing together. I am not going to be thinking about romance with him at all when I'm in that zone. But if he takes me out to a restaurant tonight and, says, "Hey, Becky, I want to take you to your favorite bar tonight, and let's get that cocktail you love, and let's just talk." And now I'm able to be the woman because he's taken over the football and he's created a plan. He wants to take me to a place I love and romance me. And now I'm in a more vulnerable feminine energy, and he shows up on my sexual radar because of this.
Yeah.
But if I'm married to a man who's making me plan all the trips, I have to take care of everything. I'm the one that, has to plan our life. Then I'm probably not going to be think sexual or romantic things with him at all. And so the disconnect happens.
Becky, is this in your book?
Yes. Yes, it is.
I have so much to say on this, or to ask, whatever.
Yes.
I mean,
it's fascinating. It really is.
Fascinating. Because masculine and feminine works like yin and yang.
That's right.
Most of us know this. But when we're in this, I loved your metaphor of passing the football. Know when you have to be in your masculine and know when you should be in your feminine. But how many people do you think really understand that passing the football?
0%. I'm obsessed with these things that we're talking about. And so my hobby is studying these things and trying to figure out why things are this way in relationships. And I mine all this information gold. And then my clients tell me it resonates with them. And yet nobody knows anything about it. Nobody's talking about it. So that's why I'm on your show today. Like, I want people to know there is so much good information out there, and wake up. I mean, you can go to my blog, and I write about all these things on my blog. I have my book. I'm coming on podcasts. I feel like I've got to scream it from the rooftops, that there's some really great stuff that's not commonly known. That's so helpful and so deep and so wonderful.
So what happens if you have a couple that she is definitely in her masculine, but wants that, be able to hand the football over, has chatted with her partner about it. They agree. Yeah. Okay. Agree. But then he doesn't really receive the football.
Getting men to come out of the nice guy pleaser, wimpy man mode is quite a task. It's scary for them. And I have them read that book that I was just telling you about called No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's about It's by a guy named Glover. Then there's another guru out there who has written many books about masculine female energy. His name's David Data. I get them to start becoming a student of this. You need to go to school, everybody. You need to go to relationship school. You need to go to understand some certain basics of psychology and human nature and things like that. A lot of people are resistant to kind of becoming students of this stuff. You don't have to know it like I do, but you can, if you'll become curious. Okay, my wife needs me to plan the next trip, but I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm afraid she's not going to like it. I'm afraid she's going to slam. Okay, so there's your opportunity to go become a student of why you've got this problem. And yes, go to therapy. Let a therapist help you figure out how you can change your perspective, because women long for this. They long for this. It's hard to find guys who have that perfect balance.
Right. I want to shift gears just a little bit. So you talk a lot about emotional availability, and I think about women in midlife who have gone through a divorce and now they're trying to find this man, this emotionally available man. What do you wish more women, especially in midlife, understood about getting involved with somebody who's almost available?
I have written a blog saying that women, it's your fault. Men are emotionally unavailable and all these things that we don't like because we allow it by we still want to date them. We still want to hang out with them, even though they're emotionally disabled on some level. And what I'm saying is what if we refuse to tolerate 1 minute of social emotional unavailability? Then men would have to step up or they would never get a woman. So I think we enable it by having sex with them and goo-gooing over them and chasing men that are emotionally unavailable. What motivation do they have to change? You know what I mean? We don't demand it. We do. We bitch, but you don't leave. You tolerate it. So I think women should stand up. I tell my single women clients, I'm like, stop chasing men. Stop looking pitiful about, does he like me? Does he like me? Does he like me? Forget that. Be in your woman power and tell men, this is what I want, need, and expect, and die on that hill. I won't settle for less. I mean, we're only going to probably find about 80% of what we're looking for in a relationship. And so you just got to make sure that the 20% they don't have is not deal killer stuff. On the emotionally unavailable deal, I have kind of a rule of thumb that I followed when I was single that worked for me. And that was, if you do your seduction thing with me and act all excited about me and lure me in like a fish in a boat, and then you pull away on me, and then you come back, I'm going to tell you that was your one grace period of pulling back. If you pull back on me again a second time, we're done. I don't do the push pull, the in out, the hot cold, because I respect myself too much. And that's not healthy for me because that causes me anxiety when I'm with somebody that I can't count on 100%. So I think that, again, we women need to tell them, I need you to be stable and consistent and solid, or I'm out. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Right. Obviously, you've worked with women who are in toxic marriages or relationships. And so what do you think the psychological block is that keeps them there? Like, even when they know it's harming them. And I think that's sort of a lead in from what you just said. We know it's harming us. We know, but we just keep going back or we stay. What is that?
Well, attachment, even unhealthy attachment, is hard to break. You can't turn it off like a faucet. But the biggest problem, I think, is women are deluding themselves that he'll change. And because most of these guys that are that way were seductive and wonderful on the front end of the relationship. And so avoidant attached people are unbelievable seducers. They get us, it's like a fisherman, get the hook in our mouth. They pull us in the boat and then they go off to a picnic,
Yeah.
And so there's your sign, and here's the thing, and I have written a blog about this too. They're not going to ever be seduction guy again. That was a guy who knew how to pull out all the stops. It was an act to get what he wanted, which was you. And once he's got the hook in your mouth and you can't get out of the boat because you're now into him, he sees that he's got you. Then he can go be his true self, which is run for the hills, man. That, can't deal with being uncomfortable at all in a relationship. And so he runs for the hills at the first feeling of discomfort. So I worked at a family violence clinic when I was an intern in grad school. And the stats there were that women in abusive relationships leave 7 times before they leave for good, because the man is not always bad. He's good and he's bad. And women tell themselves, well, if he can just be that good guy, the guy that I really love when he's being super nice, then I'd be so happy. So they just keep waiting for that niceness to stick and to stay. And it's never going to. It's a cycle. And when you see the cycle of nice guy who then distances and then, probably beg him for more attachment when he's distancing, and he may explode during that period of time. But after he explodes, he regrets it, and now he's nice guy again. That's a cycle of behavior. People that are wired that way, they don't stop the cycle. It'll always come back to the guy that distances himself. So that's part of the education process for toxic relationships, is understanding seductive guys never coming back. And number 2, once they start the nice guy distancing thing, it's a pattern that will go on until the end of time. And so you have to make your decisions accordingly.
Becky, I pulled my audience and I've got some rapid fire questions. So some yes, no's, and you could even throw depends in there.
Okay.
But try to stay yes or no.
All right.
Can a narcissist ever really change?
No.
Can a marriage survive without intimacy?
Yes.
Should you wait a year before dating after a divorce? 100% or nah?
100%.
Can you fix a marriage if only one person is trying?
Yes.
Is it wrong to want space, not a divorce, after 20 years together?
No.
Should I forgive emotional cheating, or is that a deal breaker?
It depends.
And this is not a yes or no, but how do I really know if someone is emotionally available?
Because they don't push away. They're consistently there and responsive to you. Consistently.
Even though they might be scared. Even though they might be scared, there could be something that is fearful about getting into a relationship again, but they never push away. Is that what you're?
Yep, right. Like my husband, luckily when I was dating him, had been single for 10 years, had never had a boyfriend. And I had learned this stuff that we're talking about now. And I wasn't going to tolerate another distancing man in my life. My mantra is that's not healthy for me. It's toxic for me. It makes me nervous. It makes me anxious. So I won't do that to myself. We started dating and he was consistent from day one. How much he liked me, how much he enjoyed me, how much he wanted to, see me. And he has never not been that way for 15 years, and he's a secure attached man, which is the holy grail attachment style for all of us. And he can let me, run off and have my career and do all the things I love to do and never complain. And he can take all the closeness and time I want with him. He's ambidextrous. He'll spend as much time with me as I want, or he'll give me as much space as I want. It's heaven. He's always there if I want him.
Congratulations to that. Becky, give us the name of your book again. And where can we find it?
I Think I Want Out, What to Do When One of You Wants to End Your Marriage. And it's available at all major booksellers online. It's in hard copy, audiobook, and digital versions.
Okay. Well, on Audible, you mean?
Yes, it's on Audible.
Are you reading it?
I am.
Okay, I'm downloading it today. I only download the Audible.
My voice didn't just annoy you to death?
Nope. I only download Audibles. Very rare will I download an Audible if it's not read by the author. So Excellent.
I'm
I
with you
can't
on
wait.
that.
I'm in.
I'm with you
I'm
on that.
in.
80 hours in a studio, ladies and gentlemen.
My God. Becky, you are amazing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, sharing the stories that you shared, the insights. It was just so good. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just love your curiosity and your wonderful, thoughtful questions. So thank you.
Becky, thank you again, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, it's Lynette. Thanks for listening today. Please like and subscribe. And if there's somebody out there that you think could benefit from the episode, give it a share. Midlife is your time, so go get it.